More debate on running Mac apps on the iPad. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Headspace. Meditation made simple. Visit headspace.com/MacVoices for a free 1-month trial. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is part 2 in a 3-part conversation about the topic of running apps, Mac apps, on your iPad. Now, you would think this is a pretty easy question and a pretty simple discussion, and it turned into anything but. So I'm going to take us right back to the panel so you can continue to hear what their thoughts are. And there are a lot of thoughts. This is fascinating because there are multiple levels of this discussion. There's the developer level, there's the user level, there's the shortcuts issue, there are the API calls. I'll throw in my utilities on the Mac side, and I think it's so tempting, and I often do it, and I probably shouldn't, to boil it down and say, aren't you people that want the Mac OS on the iPad cute? Because that means you guys are going to have to carry around your iPad, a pointing device, and a keyboard, as opposed to an M1 MacBook Air or MacBook Pro that has a keyboard and a pointing device all built in, and I can fold it up, and it's as small, arguably smaller than the iPad. So, but
you don't have to. Well, as I pointed out, I was already carrying both devices with me on trips. As you know, I really like the iPad for a lot. It's great for sitting back and browsing my email and looking at Twitter and looking at YouTube. I prefer that to using my laptop. But then there's certain work things that I can't do on. But yeah, you have a good point. It might be easier just to keep bringing the two devices instead of bringing a Magic Keyboard, with me, maybe.
That's what
I don't know. Although
doing.
It'd be a heck of a lot more expensive. That was I think that's the point that some of the people I'm seeing on the blogosphere is, well, gee, Apple, you want us to pay $2,400 for this iPad? Then, it needs to do all the things I need to do. And, if I have to go out and buy an iPad, and, it's one thing if, okay, you go out and buy an iPad and it's $300. Okay, great, but you're telling me you should pay over $2,000 for it, but I can't run Final Cut or I can't run Xcode. Some people are going to be like, well, why can't I do that when I'm paying, if you want me to buy the super, maybe, you're not going to run, Mac OS apps on your iPad mini, but on my 12.9 inch $2,300 iPad Pro, maybe if you want to sell me that, give me a reason. And for some people that would be a big reason.
Yeah.
First, I want to make sure I introduce Mark Fuccio, who has joined the panel. Mark, great to have you making a statement about vaccination. So thank you.
Yes.
Everyone get your vaccination. Everyone wear your mask.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we did it. So that's good. I got midway through what sounds like a fascinating discussion of, Mac versus iPad. So I'll sit back and listen before I join in with some points.
All right. Well, let me pull the chat room in because they've been making a whole lot of different comments here. So let me go down and I'll try to pick them up. Webb says, I'm fine with the separation between iOS and macOS. In the end, the apps I use pretty much run on both sides, thinking Microsoft Office. Brian says, I can't remember where he heard it, but if Apple cannibalizes a product, it needs a new product to replace it. Let's see, what else? Brian says a revenue stream. Sorry, I cut him off. Webb says, I use my iPad as much as my main portable device for business meetings and then clean up my notes, for example, on my Mac. And he uses the Files app on iOS. That's been a tremendous help. and let's see, well, Jay's hanging out in the chat room too, that he's been struggling with syncing for the last week, and it needs more stability before he's ready for it to be his main driver. So, that I think that's a great point. I mean, and again, we're so early into so many of these things. I mean, Big Sur was sort of the second time we were starting to see realistically running iPad apps on the Mac. So now once we get the new M1 iPad, I don't know if that'll change anything or not. But it feels like this is, once again, we're in an evolutionary stage, and everybody here on this panel wants us to be, 6 months to a year ahead. And I'm not sure that's really realistic at this point.
That's great. We're nerds who visualize the future. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
I agree, Brittany, to a point. But I do think sometimes it sets unrealistic expectations for all of us, and we start to see this as a failing of Apple, and not, we act like this, you just wave your magic wand and this stuff happens, and that's far from the truth.
Well, we also act like Apple caters to our personal needs. And when they haven't catered to us as an individual, they have failed as a company. And you see this every single keynote event, media event Apple does. A new product comes out and people flip their crap because that's not the product that they wanted Apple to release. Apple is a crap company. Apple is failing us all. They are doomed. And the reality is
just a few loud people, though. I mean,
mostly clickbait anyway.
For reasons. Jay and I are slightly less likely to be in the group that expects big companies to cater to us. For reasons. But at the same time, like, all the people I follow on the internet, I mean, occasionally they're like, they get a little frustrated or whatever, but like, Apple's the worst, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't enter into my field. Maybe I've just cut out all the negativity, and maybe I'm just waiting for it to catch me and nip me in the butt. I don't know. But like, isn't it just a few people being really loud and obnoxious?
If what I started this conversation, if I came up as a complaint, that's not what I meant. What I meant was there's discussion on the internet that's like Apple has built this, super whizzy, expensive iPad Pro that's $2,400. And so people are saying, gee, Apple, what's the, what's this for? Why are we supposed to spend this much money on an iPad Pro? So that was my talk was, here's a possible way that Apple could make it very worth people's while. That's what
and they invited this discussion when they called it M1.
Course.
They invited the discussion to happen,
and they've never mentioned how much RAM was in an iPad before. And
now
fascinating to see.
They said, here's the spec of how much RAM. Wow, why are you mentioning that? And interesting that you're mentioning that when it's identical to the Mac computers that you're selling.
Did they mention it, or did they just say that the iPad was going to get the M1?
It's on the order page.
No,
I've noticed these past couple events over the past year or so for both Mac and iPhone, that Apple is diverting from sort of a Jobsian philosophy, and they're sharing a lot more about the specs of their devices instead of just, hey, look at this, isn't wonderful? It's fast and does all these great things for you. So that's just I think a continuation. And I think for this, it's no secret for the M1. I think they did it probably just to stave off a tidal wave of questions about
people wondering whether it was actually the same M1 as what was in the Mac.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think.
They nipped that in the bud by saying, it's got 8 gigs and X number of cores, just like the one in the Mac.
Well, actually, the higher level ones are 16 gig.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I feel like the M1, that's just the latest chip that Apple has. That's just a name, right? Like, I feel like my opinion is that the iPads have had the power for a long time, maybe a couple years now, to run what we're talking about, more powerful apps, macOS level apps. I don't know if, we're not seeing that right now. I don't know if that's Apple's fault, or like I said, from that quote, the power's there. It's just that maybe third-party developers haven't tried to fully access all the capabilities.
Well,
I think
part of it,
I don't agree with that.
I think part of this
No.
is, some of this thing is the power is you get it whether you need it or not. I mean, you can't go back and say, oh, Apple, I'll gladly trade you 500 megahertz if you knock $1,500 off the price. That's not.
But you could buy an iPad or an iPad Air.
Sure, you could.
So they need to give you some reason to buy the Pro.
Well, no. I have a different view slightly, which is I don't think that they're offering and need to convince Mac people to buy the Pro. I think they have their own vision and sort of their own audience and constituency who appreciates what it can do. And they're distinct from Mac people. And I dare say that probably 70, 80, 90% of the people here, are Mac people. And we're not in the bullseye for the iPad Pro. They're for creatives who have different use cases and different applications. And for us, just say, well, if you want me to spend that enormous amount of money, for these things, screw that, just buy a Macintosh. End of discussion.
Part of me wishes Kelly was here because I know that, like, at least from my knowledge in the IT space, when our CEO heard that there was a new Apple device, they said, I don't care what it does. I don't care what it is. Give me the most powerful one. And when the next one comes out, I'm just going to say, get me that one too. And I'm sure there are a lot of CEOs out there. There are a lot of executives out there that don't know how powerful these devices are, and they don't care. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on that Andrew had mentioned, that third-party developers aren't utilizing the technology enough. I think they are. And I think that's actually why they haven't gone to the Mac, is that on the iPad, tools like LumaFusion, tools like Procreate, tools like what's the one, the audio Ferrite, those are like the
Affinity
premier
Photo, Affinity Design.
Those are on the Mac.
But like those
And on
tools
the
that are
iPad.
iPad only,
Yeah,
those
he's
are
talking
like
iPad
the
only.
Final Cut and Logic of the iPad. They have that entire space of people who just say, you know what? An iPad is good enough for me. I can edit my podcast with it. I can edit my videos with it. I don't need an iPad. I don't need a Mac. I don't want a Mac. So I'm happy with it. And to me, it's like, why, if I were a user of those products, if I'm all into the iPad ecosystem, part of me would not want them to split their time developing another application for something that I'm never going to use and I'm never going to want to talk about. But as I said in the YouTube chat, someone forgot to tell Jeff that I'm the most important person and Apple should only be catering to me and nobody else. So that's just one
that's
opinion.
my
Hey,
bad.
I told Apple that, but I think I said me instead of you.
Frank, we haven't heard from you, and you said something interesting in the chat that I want you to expound on a little bit and explain.
Oh, okay. What I was saying, listen, everybody was going, okay, we can't put the Mac on the iPad on the Mac. And okay, Apple is an ecosystem, but I see the Mac and the iPad as a sub-ecosystem, just like the iPhone OS and the Watch OS. They're dependent upon each other, and they can build together. If they could make a thing where, like, well, for example, look at how iPad. Well, now iPads jump with the M1, but when iPad started out with LumaFusion, you could do X amount of lines of video and X amount of lines of audio, and then what you do is you'd bump it over to the hardware, that had the Mac OS, and you would put all the finishing touches and gloss and buff it up right there. And I don't know that they have to mend. The only thing I see that has to really mesh is basically the UI, and that's on what I consider the grandmother front, or the parent front, so that what they've seen and how it reacts. If I hit this in the one OS, it's going to do the same thing in the other OS. May not have the same power, but it leads me to the same end.
Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Headspace. Meditation made simple. I'm not sure who needs to hear this, but here you go. You deserve to feel better than you do today. And you can with Headspace. They make meditation simple. Headspace started as an events company, but so many attendees wanted to take what they learned with them that Headspace as a mindful guided meditation company was born by popular demand. That's always a great way for anything to start, by popular demand. And Popular defines Headspace's success, with over 60 million downloads of their easy-to-use app and over 600,000 five-star reviews of that app. That means it's not only popular, but also wildly successful. What makes Headspace great? There are so many things. The simple guided meditations that the app facilitates, the many different kinds of meditation, the fact that Headspace asks you what your objective is, rather than trying to apply a one-size-fits-all approach. The list goes on and on. Isn't it time you did something to help cut down on your stress, improve your focus, and get a better night's sleep? You deserve to feel happier, and Headspace is meditation made simple. Go to headspace.com/MacVoices. That's headspace.com/MacVoices for a 1-month free trial with access to Headspace's full library of meditations for every situation. That's the best deal offered right now, so head over to headspace.com/MacVoices today. Thanks to Headspace for their support of MacVoices. Okay, so is it fair to say, am I boiling it down by saying buy the right tool for what you do?
Well, actually, no. Actually, the two tools could be like, what's the word? Complementary. In other words, there's a lot of stuff I couldn't do with the Watch OS if I didn't have the iPhone OS. It would never happen. And in a way, the Watch is dependent, although it can do some stuff on its own. It's dependent in many ways on the iPhone OS. So I don't see why the iPad OS would have to be in head-to-head competition with the Mac OS. It could be the little brother of sorts that takes you off. Now, because you're in a higher-end arena, I could see the iPad would be good enough for, like, let's say, YouTubers and stuff like that. But I've got friends who, graduate from film school, and they're doing all this real high-end stuff. Well, you can sketch out, in essence, well, actually sort of start
shot by shot.
And a shoot, right. And you could sketch it out. You can lay it out like an assembly editor or something. And then you take it back to the big heavy hardware. And that's where you buff it and you polish it. I don't think they have to be separate. Basically, well, a little more than storyboarding, Guy. I mean, you can, I do my storyboarding with the iPhone. I just walk around and take the pictures instead of doing the drawings. But you could, with an iPad, start the project, initiate it, film it either, the iPad you'd use as a monitor, you'd film on the iPhone. But then once you've got, like, it would almost be like the rough edit of a project on your iPad, you then shift it over to Mac OS. That's the way I see it. I don't see it as either or. I think there's several, right now there's 2 sub ecosystems within the Apple ecosystem.
For hardware.
Yeah. And like I said, the UIs I would just make look sort. I know everybody gets their knickers in a twist, but I think the UIs looking similar are great. Anybody that's a family IT person, if you get them to know the one thing like the iPhone or the iPad, you could dump them over to something else and they can sort of figure it out.
I think, Guy, that the difference is not the hardware anymore. The same hardware is running both. I mean, we've already got
a recent development.
This is a forward-looking podcast, right?
Right.
Forward-looking show. It's not gonna go back to being different. It's just going to be more and more that they're the same. They're going to be running the same processors. So that's not a differentiator anymore. The differentiator is the software stack. What APIs are running, and the thing is that there's some things that iPad are better. There's some things that Macs are better, and I don't think that's in the short one, we're not looking at a time when iPads are going to be better than Macs at everything. Certainly probably at least 5 years and maybe 10 years, I would think there's still going to be things that the Mac OS is better than the iPad. So the question is, users want to use the right tool for the job, and for some users, well, everything the iPad will be right. But I think for a lot of people, they still need that truck. I know I still do. Basically, I'm just thinking that Apple could provide a tool that would allow more things to be done on this tablet hardware. Let's not call it an iPad. Let's call it tablet hardware. Why should that be artificially limited? I mean, clearly, I think everybody here agrees that technically Apple could make Mac OS apps run on tablet hardware. There's nobody here that disagrees with that, right? So it's just a question of whether Apple decides that's in their interest or not.
With great power comes great WWDCs.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, that is the event I get the most excited about.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Because you can give me all the hardware, but if I can't do anything with it, then that really tells me what tools I can unlock.
So first of all, I want to make sure Mark has a hard out at the top of the hour. So Mark, I want to give you a say here right quick, and definitely thank you for coming. I know you're in demand. What can you say? It's the life of a star. But thanks for showing up. Any final thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that they are two different type of platforms. Apple has blurred some of it by trying to offer tools that can help developers move, create apps that can be sort of by platform ish. But I really think that that's maybe an exercise in frustration. I mean, they really, a Mac with a keyboard and a screen, it has fundamental characteristics, with its multitasking Windows system, yada yada yada. That's very different than the touch interface, on the iPad. It's true over time they've had to do different things so people could do some degree of multitasking, but I think fundamentally it's a very different type of computing device and experience. And instead of trying to force them together and tried to complain about, well, why can't we do this and that and the other thing? I think that leads to the least common denominator. I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Frank or David who said earlier that Microsoft apps and things run equally well on both devices. Well,
they do.
That's not really high praise in my opinion. So I think really, just cherish, what the iPad Pro can do. And they're, let's look at what they're doing with LiDAR and AR and, all sorts of other applications. And, just, we should value and cherish them because they are so different, because, otherwise, why would somebody spend near $2,000 or more for on an iPad when they could get basically the same stuff for $1,100 in a MacBook Air? So really by looking at the economics, I think really indicates there's value in different use cases, and unfortunately not everybody has has identical use cases. So with that, I just say let's let things go and see how the Apple Silicon products of all stripes develop. It's been fascinating 6 months, and can't wait forward to see what happens 6 and 12 months from now.
Agreed. Thanks again for being here, Mark. Stick around as long as you can, but I just want to make sure that if you need to sneak out the back door, you are acknowledged.
Yeah, I'll stay here until my incoming phone call comes, and then I'll jump out.
Okay, got it. David, I wanted to pull you in too, because you've been quiet here and
trying to get in.
Yeah. Well, the question I have for you is this: you and I both work in a particular industry. When the iPad came along, at any level, I mean, it was kind of a revelation, because it was a portable computer that actually could be used, with a pen or with the finger, and it was able to do so many things that in so many places that a traditional laptop wouldn't. And so I'm kind of curious if you have any thoughts on, okay, so now we have more power, we have more powerful apps. and we don't want to go down the pro app discussion again, but do you think that this is just a natural evolution, and how much of a difference could it make? Jim made a really interesting point. Apple needs to make a case for us buying these expensive iPads. Is there a business case for buying an expensive iPad?
There is a business case in the sense of I was touched upon earlier about CEOs wanting the most powerful device there is. They think that because they're out and about, and then they want to have a device that's going to be very easy to use as well as powerful, so they're not crashing. I mean, I'm seeing more and more of the executives are going with these types of devices only because they're just tired of the Microsoft in a PC and crashing, and they can do pretty much anything that they need. As far as a mainstream device, it's very possible. I think many companies are going to already start looking at it, because in the sense of being able to manage them too, with using Jamf, being able to manage an iPad, being able to control what it does, and also keep it so it stays in a place where it works and functions. Because a lot of in the enterprise world, it's tough to support them sometimes if you don't have any manageability in place, because the devices can crash. So I do see a business case. I was also going to, if you don't mind, I was going to spin just on a little topic here real quick. Here is interesting. When we had the event last week, with the M1 thing, when Tim Cook disguised Tim Cook grabbing the chip out of the app of the Mac and bringing it over to the iPad, that kind of told me that there's more to come. I think Apple is going is thinking about this more so than ever, especially with the Pro devices. Could they focus on just the Mac apps? Could come over to the Pro devices? It's very possible, but that kind of stuck in my head as far as the M1, and really trying to highlight the fact that, oh, look, we're bringing the M1 over to the iPad. We've got some future here. I'm with many on the panel here that the WWDC is going to be very interesting to see what comes of it, and when it comes to that. So, that was my thoughts on that.
Okay. Jay, you put something in the chat room. It's not often that on MacVoices Live we get biblical references, so I'm going to let you do those.
Oh man, well, as a non-licensed minister, which is actually a truth, I'm a something, I don't know. Anyway.
I'm a licensed non-minister.
Yeah, I mean, basically,
well, now I'm going to have to say developer and Minister Jay. It's going to get very
past
long.
Past life. That was 20s me, not 30s me. Now, what I was saying was, I feel like there was this Cain and Abel relationship between the iPad and the Mac ecosystem. There's a lot of folks that want both, and just as much as I'm sure that Cain and Abel's parents, Adam and Eve, they wanted both. They were like, oh yeah, both are nice. It's great. I would love for both to get along very well. But there are those folks out there that are just like, well, I mean. Me personally, my iPad is for FaceTime calls with my family on the other side of the country, and Twitter, and the occasional Zoom call when I feel like taking it from the kitchen instead of my office. That doesn't mean that the people that have made careers and make way more money than I do on their iPhones and iPads are doing something wrong. I think that more than anything, Apple is smart by saying the iPad only folks want their iPad and their iPad features. The Mac only folks, or the Mac first folks, want their Macs and their Mac features. Obviously, we got that with the iMac Pro and the Mac Pro and all that. We want to be able to cater to the people that are willing to go all in on a device, because those are the people that are going to buy the most expensive version of whatever we put out there. And we saw this with, people like John Siracusa, who has flat out said, I don't need to buy a $20,000 device, but I buy a Mac once every 10 years, so I'm going to buy a $20,000 device. And there are people who are looking at the new iPads and saying, I'm going to buy that iPad. It's the strongest iPad I've ever had. Will I notice a difference? I don't know. But what I do know is if it were a Mac and it had the same performance difference, everyone would be like, ooh, new Mac Pro. I'm going to buy the new Mac Pro if they were the Mac people. So I think that ultimately Apple is happy with saying, let the iPad people be the iPad people. Let the Mac people be the Mac people. We're going to take your money either way, and we're going to do it happily. We'll just put you on one section of the Apple Store, and we'll put everybody else on the other section of the Apple Store, and everybody will get along just fine when they go to buy their iPhones.
And some of us, they'll take money for both of them.
Well, it's interesting, though, that they have already merged them and that you can run iOS apps on the Mac now.
But I think that's like a happy side effect. I don't think that's something that they're, because I mean, that's even one of the things they mentioned. Oh yeah, you can do that, but then all of the major app developers haven't.
That was not a side effect.
It makes my life easier. It doesn't have to merge the OS. It makes me happy, and it makes my life easier.
They worked on that for years. That was not a side effect.
I feel like it doesn't make sense though to talk about Catalyst, to talk about Swift UI, and then say, oh, by the way, you don't have to develop a Mac app now because your iOS app will be just fine.
Brittany, go ahead. Yeah, Brittany, make your point, because I want to make. I'm curious to hear what you're thinking or what you're saying.
Oh, well, I mean, having access to apps in both platforms does not necessarily mean the base OS is getting merged, but it sure is convenient. I was about to pull up this Tally app I have for something while I'm sitting here, and I can't because my M1 just died again, and I don't have my Tally app on this computer. And it's like, it's a tiny little thing, but it's a convenience that I didn't have to go get out my iPhone to do that thing. And it makes my life easier. It doesn't have to merge it. But yeah, we had Catalyst first, and then just like, hey, just don't uncheck this box. And then people uncheck the box. But we have these apps for some of them, and it's cool. And some I installed, I admit it, just because it was funny that I could install this particular app. And it is just this nice, cool convenience, and it does make life easier. Sort of like I complained about in our other episode about what do you want from Apple when the interfaces don't match. Like, I don't want to have to stop and think, oh no, let's say there's shortcuts on Mac. This is shortcuts on my Mac. I can't do this one action. Drafts has the same problem. I don't use drafts. I only write drafts on Mac because I don't have to stop and think, like, what can this draft do here versus what can it do on my iPhone? They get processed on my iPhone. That's the only place. And so I don't have to stop and think, right, I don't have the Tally app on this computer because this is my old computer. I need this app. This is what's in front of me, and I'm going to use it. And the share button's going to be in the same spot. And life will be beautiful, even though it is a different base operating system. And that's okay. Like, let's make our usability feel universal, even though they're specialized. I don't want a video edit on my iPad. Not really. It'd be nice to have the option if I was in a pinch, but I don't really want to do that. I like specific devices, but I know that's not for everybody too, and that's cool. I like that I have all of them, and I like it when I can use the same apps on both of them. It makes me happy.
It's interesting you mentioned drafts there, because I had that exact problem this week where I was working on a draft that would copy a file, and I kept wondering why it wasn't working, because it was like everything said it was good. And I'm like, where's this stupid file at? I'm checking my documents. I'm checking where I told it to save. And then I remembered, oh yeah, drafts is in the App Store. It's sandboxed. Yep. I can't tell this thing to automatically save it in this folder. And that's something that Greg Pierce, the developer of drafts, has said, like, this only works. This JavaScript thing that you've built will only work if you're trying to save your files in our sandboxed file folder with the little drafts icon on it. You can access it on iPad, but that doesn't mean that you can take that file that you've created in drafts and then move it to another application automatically. And I think that's where there's a lot of these weird sandboxing issues that just tells me that Apple, I don't think, wants to encourage types of behavior like that, which the people that are saying we want macOS on iPad devices, they're going to want that. They're going to want that behavior. They're going to want that functionality. If it's not there, they're going to complain.
Almost done, but not quite with this topic, as the group wraps up their thoughts on running Mac apps on an iPad and why that is a good idea, at least in some of their opinions. That's next time on Mac Voices. I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.